I've replayed that afternoon more times than I care to admit. Not because I enjoy hurting myself, but because understanding the moment your life detaches from its old shape, that takes time. My name is Dr. Naomi Clarke, Naomi, and the day I earned that title was the same day the Clarke name stopped belonging to me. I was 29, a public health researcher, and for once in my life, I thought that I had done something my parents would show up for. I remember standing behind the curtain of the auditorium, adjusting the collar of my gown, feeling my heartbeat in the hollow of my throat. You don't get many moments like that. Moments that are supposed to be shared. Moments that are supposed to be witnessed by the people who said they believed in you. Before I continue my story, tell me this. Would you forgive if someone you trusted the most failed you on the biggest day of your life? If they never even apologized? Or would you make that betrayal haunt them for the rest of their life? Share your honest opinion in the comments. I truly want to hear your perspective. I kept checking my phone, not because I doubted them, but because they had promised. My mother had said, "We wouldn't miss this for anything, sweetheart." My father had said, "A Clarke achieving a doctorate? That's legacy." Legacy. I didn't know that word would taste like ash by the end of the day. When they called my name, Dr. Naomi Clarke, I stepped forward into the lights. The applause blurred into a soft roar. I scanned the audience, instinctively, searching for the familiar silhouettes of my parents. My father's upright posture, my mother's bright smile, my brother's lazy half-wave. All I saw were 2 empty seats with neatly printed name cards that said, "Reserved." It took only a second for the truth to land, but it landed with surgical precision. A quick sting followed by a spreading numbness. I swallowed it, smiled for the camera, accepted my diploma, and walked off stage with the quiet dignity of someone who has learned too many times how to perform gratitude while bleeding inside. But the real breaking point came later. Not in the ceremony, not in the auditorium, but in the parking lot. A classmate approached me with a phone in hand, laughing. "Your brother's party looks insane. I didn't know you guys were having a pool day during graduation." And there it was. My family. Cocktails, pool inflatables, sunlit laughter, not even a text. That was the moment my world went silent. A silence sharp enough to carve decisions I never thought I'd make. From my life before the betrayal wasn't perfect, but it was predictable. Predictability can feel like love when you grow up believing stability is the closest thing you'll ever have to affection. I used to wake up every morning in my small apartment, 600 square feet of secondhand furniture and soft morning light, feeling like I was living inside a temporary chapter. The kind of chapter you tell yourself you'll grow out of soon, once you've earned enough, once you've achieved enough, once you've proven enough. I had routines. I think they kept me alive in ways I didn't fully understand at the time. Every morning, I made the same oatmeal with sliced bananas and cinnamon, sat at the same tiny kitchen table, and reviewed my digital journal. I kept everything documented. Dots, receipts, reminders, voice notes, because something inside me always felt the need to record, as if evidence could protect me from the shifting moods of the people who raised me. I grew up in a house where love came in 2 temperatures. Warm for my older brother Ethan, and lukewarm, sometimes cold, for me. Ethan was the son,
I was the reliable moon, visible only when convenient, quietly serving a purpose no one cared to define. My parents weren't cruel in obvious ways. They paid for food, for clothes, for school trips when they could. But attention, effort, showing up, that was reserved for Ethan. His soccer games, his swim meets, his impulsive hobby of the month choices. Those were the events the family calendar revolved around. I learned early not to expect celebration. Instead, I built a life around achievement. Straight A's, honor courses, volunteering, internships, late night studying. I thought if I stacked enough accomplishments, someone, anyone, would finally look at me the way they looked at him. It took me years to realize some people will stare directly at your shine and still insist it's dim. My job as a public health researcher didn't impress anyone at home. They liked titles only when they could claim ownership over them. Our son is, our boy is. I can still hear the pride stretching their voices thin whenever Ethan did anything remotely notable. When it came to me, the tone shifted. Naomi studies something with health, my mother once told a neighbor, hand-waving dismissively. I remember standing there, holding a casserole dish I'd baked for the gathering, pretending I didn't hear the erosion happening in real time. Still, I tried to love them the way adult children of emotional neglect often do, quietly, responsibly, without complaint. I helped them with bills whenever they fell behind, especially the last few years. I paid the car insurance when my father forgot. I covered the utilities when my mother said, in that softened voice she used only when she wanted something, "Honey, could you help us just once?" It was never once. But I never argued. I just figured this was what you did when you were the child who had it together. I don't think they ever knew how hard my days were. The long lab hours, the grant applications, the pressure to publish, the anxiety that may work. My life was always 5 steps away from falling apart. Some nights I came home so exhausted I would sit on the floor in my hallway, still wearing my bag, staring at the wall because I didn't have the energy to stand or cry or think. But I never said anything. I told myself complaining wouldn't change anything, and besides, who was I to need comfort? The only people who seemed to notice my effort were outside my family. My mentor, Professor Lena Morales, who constantly reminded me that consistency is a form of courage. My elderly neighbor, Mrs. Dorsey, who left small notes on my door whenever she heard me come home late. "Eat something warm tonight, baby." And Malik, the attorney I would later rely on, who once joked that I document my life better than most court cases. Still, my heart belonged to my parents in that naive, unexamined way adult children sometimes cling to. The belief that maybe one day they'll meet you halfway, even if they never have before. Graduation day wasn't just a ceremony for me. It was the culmination of years of being the quiet achiever. And more than that, it was supposed to be a moment of acknowledgement. A moment where I finally felt seen, not as Ethan's sister, not as the dependable daughter, not as the family problem solver, but as myself. In the days leading up to the ceremony, my parents were unusually attentive. My mother texted me reminders about what shoes to wear. My father asked what time he should arrive. They said they were proud of me. They said they wouldn't miss it. And God, I wanted to believe them. I wanted to believe that maybe, just once, I mattered enough. Looking back now, I can see the truth clearly. Hope is a tender thing, and I had been holding it with bare hands. But at the time, I just wanted my family there. That was all. And that desire, that simple human desire, was the first crack that made everything else possible.
The morning of my graduation felt
strangely quiet. Not peaceful, just quiet. In the way a room feels before a storm, when the air thickens but nothing moves. I woke up early, long before my alarm, the kind of early where you don't feel rested, just aware. My gown hung on my closet door, its fabric catching the soft morning light like something sacred. I remember staring at it for a long moment, thinking, this is the day they finally show up. I got dressed slowly, brushing my hair with careful strokes, applying makeup with hands that trembled more from anticipation than nerves. I sent a quick message to my parents. Leaving now. See you soon. A simple text, but my heart waited for those 3 little dots that never appeared. Still, I told myself they were driving. They'd reply later. Hope can be so painfully stubborn. The campus was alive when I arrived. Graduates in clusters, families holding bouquets, photographers shouting directions. Everything glowed with celebration. The kind that warms you, even if you're standing on the outside of it. Professors hugged students, parents adjusted their children's caps. I watched it all like someone watching a movie they weren't cast in. Inside the auditorium, I checked my phone again. No messages. Not even a missed call. My chest tightened, but I swallowed it down, the way children of emotional neglect learn to do from an early age. It's almost a reflex. Don't make a scene. Don't take up space. Don't need too much. When the processional music started, I walked in with the others, the sea of caps moving as one. I scanned the rows from my parents, just in case, but all I saw was the reserved section with their names printed neatly on white cards. 2 empty chairs, waiting like open wounds. I told myself they were running late. Traffic happens, life happens. But a part of me knew. A part of me always knows. We sat down, listening to the speeches that blurred into a soft hum around me. I pressed my hands together tightly to stop them from shaking. My mentor, Professor Morales, caught my eye from across the aisle and gave me a small, encouraging nod. I held on to that gesture like a handrail on a swaying train. Then came the roll call. Rows stood one by one. Applause rolled through the auditorium like waves. When they reached my row, my stomach dropped. I stood. My breath thinned. Dr. Naomi Clarke. The spotlight hit me like a warm blade. I stepped forward. Applause rose, cameras flashed, but all I saw were the chairs. Empty. Solid. Final. There's a kind of pain that makes no sound. It just settles into you, fusing with your bones. I smiled for the cameras because that's what we're trained to do. I accepted my diploma with steady hands that didn't belong to the person I felt like inside. And I walked off stage with the quiet, practiced grace of someone who has learned to disguise disappointment behind composure. After the ceremony, graduates spilled into the courtyard where sunlight made everything look softer than it felt. Families handed out flowers, people posed in front of banners and fountains. I walked alone to the shade of a large oak tree, checking my phone again. Nothing. Not a text, not a voicemail. My heartbeat pulsed heavy in my throat. Then came the moment that severed the last thread. A classmate approached me, phone in hand, smiling. I expected congratulations. Instead, she held her screen out to me, laughing lightly. "Look, your brother's party looks insane. I didn't know your family was doing a pool day today. Look, he tagged everyone." I didn't even need to see the video. The thumbnail was enough. Ethan holding a drink, sunlight glinting off the pool, my mother sitting under an umbrella laughing, my father grilling. The caption, "Spontaneous family pool bash. Best day ever." Best day ever. On my graduation. My throat tightened so sharply I thought I might choke. I forced a small smile, handed the phone back, and said something like, "Oh, yeah. I don't remember my exact words. I only remember the feeling, like my chest was collapsing inward, like every version of me that had ever hoped for them was being peeled away. I stepped aside, away from the noise, away from the laughter, until I found a quiet corner behind the auditorium. My breathing grew thin and shaky. I took out my phone and stared at the last message I had sent them. Leaving now. See you soon. The 3 dots never came. Instead, the next notification I received was a photo posted by Ethan, my mother floating on a pool lounger, sunglasses on, cocktail in hand. The caption, "Mom needed this." I don't know what hurt more. The fact that they chose a pool party over my doctorate, or the fact that they didn't think I'd mind. As if my accomplishments were optional events on a calendar, as if my life was background noise to theirs. In that moment, something inside me went still. Not broken, just still. It's the kind of stillness that comes right before a decision that changes everything.
I always thought emotional pain built slowly, drop by drop, until a person eventually overflowed. But the night I discovered the truth, it didn't feel slow. It didn't feel gradual. It hit me like a sudden plunge into freezing water, shocking every nerve in my body, stealing my breath. One moment, I was a woman trying desperately to save a relationship, and the next, I was something else entirely. A silent witness to my own heartbreak. I remember standing in the hallway of the clinic, clutching my phone so tightly my fingers trembled. The fluorescent lights flickered above me, giving everything a harsh, clinical glow. I had stayed late that evening, hoping that burying myself in work would distract me from the growing distance Nathan kept putting between us. He hadn't responded to my last 3 texts, each one more vulnerable than the last. He always had a reason. Busy, tired, just needs some space. But tonight, something felt wrong. Wrong enough that my stomach had been twisting since morning. Wrong enough that a quiet panic lived just under my skin. But nothing prepared me for how brutally my intuition would be confirmed. At first, I didn't even understand what I was looking at. A notification popped up on my screen. Nathan's name glowing softly, innocently, like a warm hand reaching for mine. My heart lifted with sudden, fragile hope. Maybe he missed me. Maybe he wanted to talk. Maybe he was ready to fix things. I swiped open the message, and my world ruptured. It wasn't meant for me. It wasn't even supposed to show up on my phone. My smartwatch had synced without my realizing it, mirroring a conversation Nathan was having at that very moment with another woman. I froze, staring at the screen as if blinking would make the words change. No. This can't be real. This isn't happening. Not to me. My thumb trembled as I scrolled. I can't wait to see you again tonight. She thinks I'm working late. For a long second, all I could hear was my heartbeat. Loud, frantic, suffocating. My vision blurred at the edges like reality itself was staggering backward from the truth. No. I scrolled. I still think about last weekend, the way you touched me. God, I've missed you. A strangled gasp ripped from my throat. I pressed a hand against my mouth, fighting the wave of pain crashing through me. It didn't help. I felt everything collapsing inside me. My chest tightening, my throat burning, tears gathering so fast I could hardly see. I had imagined heartbreak before, of course, in movies, in stories, in the whispered confessions of friends, but nothing prepared me for how
physically, it hurt. How sharp. How suffocating. How could you? I whispered into the empty hallway. My voice didn't sound like mine. Thin, hollow, broken. Nathan. My Nathan. The man I stayed up with during his worst nights. The man I supported through every setback. The man I believed in when he didn't believe in himself. The man I defended when people told me he didn't deserve me. And he was telling someone else how much he missed her touch. I felt humiliated, small, stupid. Every moment from the past month replayed in my mind. His sudden distance, his late nights, the way he guarded his phone with an almost paranoid intensity. All the signs I ignored, all the excuses I made for him, all the times I chose love over truth. Was I really that easy to lie to? Was I that easy to replace? My hands shook so violently, I had to set my phone on the counter. I pressed both palms against the cool surface, bowing my head as if trying to physically keep myself from falling apart. But the messages kept coming. Don't worry, babe. I'll sneak out as soon as she falls asleep. You know I'd rather be with you. Each line cut deeper, like someone carving heartbreak directly into my ribs. A sob tore out of me before I could swallow it. I slapped my hand over my mouth, but it didn't stop the sound. My pain was too loud, too raw, too consuming to contain. I slid down the wall until I hit the floor. My chest heaved as I cried, ugly and uncontrollably, the sound echoing around the empty clinic. It felt like I was grieving someone who had died. And maybe I was. The version of Nathan I loved didn't exist anymore. Maybe he never had. I don't know how long I stayed there. Minutes, hours. Time felt meaningless. My tears felt endless. But eventually I forced myself to breathe, to lift my head, to pick up my phone. I opened the contact details. The other woman's name wasn't saved, but the photos were. My breath stopped. They weren't harmless selfies. They weren't friendly snapshots. They were intimate, physical, undeniable. Some taken in his apartment. Some taken in the shirt I bought him. Some time-stamped on nights he told me he was too tired to see me. A sharp pain shot through my chest, and I grabbed at my heart instinctively, like I could hold the pieces together with my fingers. This wasn't a mistake, or a misunderstanding, or a moment of weakness. This was deliberate, repeated, choreographed betrayal. I wiped the tears from my face with my sleeve, my voice cracking as I whispered, "Why wasn't I enough?" The silence that followed felt cruel. I grabbed my bag, turned off the clinic lights, and walked out into the night. My heart cracked wide open, my faith in him shattered, and my spirit trembling under the weight of the truth. And somewhere beneath all that pain, something else flickered to life. Not strength, not anger, not yet, but awareness. And the first faint spark of a storm I didn't yet know I was capable of unleashing.
I didn't sleep the night I discovered the truth. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying every message, every photo, every lie, until my thoughts felt like sharp edges scraping against my ribs. But somewhere between 3 and 4 in the morning, something inside me shifted. The tears stopped, the shaking stopped, and a strange, quiet clarity settled over me, like the moment after a storm when everything is eerily still. After graduation, I didn't speak to my parents for days.
I didn't send a single text. I didn't answer calls. At first, I thought my silence was grief, the kind that presses down like a weight on your chest. But as the hours passed, I realized it wasn't grief. It was strategy, calm, control, the kind that felt sharper than any scream I could have unleashed. I spent the first day alone in my apartment, replaying every moment from that morning, their empty chairs, my brother lounging by the pool, and my parents laughing as if my doctorate was irrelevant. My chest ached, not with anger, but with the quiet, hot sting of betrayal. I opened my phone and scrolled through the last messages I'd sent them. Each "see you soon" and "I love you" glared back at me like proof of my trust, a trust they had shattered for a cocktail party. I realized I needed to gather evidence, not for legal reasons, not for humiliation, but because truth has a weight, and their choices would be harder to deny if I held it in my hands. I began by opening my voicemail inbox. Every message I'd left over the past year, birthday wishes, calls after long days at work, small updates about my life, they were all there. I started saving them, downloading each to a digital folder labeled Clarke Evidence on my laptop. Next, I collected texts, old conversations that showed how I had always included them in my life, invited them to milestones, shared triumphs they pretended to care about. Every ignored invitation, every one-sided encouragement, every deleted response from them became part of the record. I didn't archive everything indiscriminately, just the parts that proved the pattern, that proved their betrayal was not accidental or fleeting. I created subfolders: graduation day, ignored messages, family events skipped. Each one contained screenshots, voice memos, timestamps. Organizing them made me feel less powerless. Every click, every drag and drop was a stitch in the fabric of my plan. I was reclaiming the narrative that had been stolen from me. I didn't stop at digital records. I made a list of witnesses, friends who had attended graduation, classmates who had seen the empty seats, even the barista at the cafe near the campus who had overheard a conversation about my parents' absence. Not for confrontation, but for completeness. If anyone tried to gaslight me later, I would have tangible proof to counter it. I also began cultivating my own independence in ways that felt symbolic. I stopped seeking their approval. I focused on my work, taking extra shifts at the pediatrics clinic and volunteering for community health programs I had always wanted to join. I sent them no updates. I didn't post anything online. I built a life they couldn't touch, and every quiet step reinforced my control. Then came the final part, the reveal. It had to be measured, precise, and undeniable. I didn't want them to argue. I didn't want tears or excuses. I wanted them to see the consequences of their choices and understand, without words from me, that I had finally placed myself first. I printed select screenshots, the ignored texts, the messages where my mother confirmed she was going to Ethan's pool party instead of my ceremony, the casual voicemail she never returned. I didn't include everything, just enough for clarity. I folded them neatly and slipped them into an envelope. On the outside, I wrote simply, "Read, understand, remember." I decided I wouldn't confront them directly. I wouldn't yell. I wouldn't beg. I would leave the envelope somewhere they couldn't ignore it, a place they would see it, touch it, and feel the weight of my absence. Finally, I gave myself rules. No revenge posts online, no gloating, no going back. Every part of the plan was calm, methodical, silent. The goal wasn't to hurt them. It was to reclaim my dignity, to show myself that their choices could no longer dictate my emotions or my life. For the first time in years, I felt like the director of my own story. Every click, every saved voicemail, every carefully preserved screenshot was a step towards something that felt almost sacred. My quiet, undeniable justice. By the end of that week, the plan was complete. I had withdrawn silently, preserved the proof, and prepared the one reveal that would make them realize their betrayal had consequences. Not in my fury, but in my freedom. And in that quiet control, I finally felt the first hints of empowerment I hadn't known I could possess.
I wish I could tell you that my revenge came from a place of strength. It didn't. It came from a place of exhaustion. Years of begging for the bare minimum. Years of pretending their neglect didn't feel like a slow rot underneath my ribs. After the graduation incident and after learning the truth about the pool party, something inside me simply stopped. Not snapped. Stopped. Like a machine that had been running too hot for too long, finally burned out. My first act of revenge wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't even intentional. I just disappeared. I didn't call. I didn't text. I didn't visit. I didn't argue. I withdrew the way a person pulls their hand away from a flame once they finally register the burn. It wasn't punishment. It was self-preservation. And maybe that's what made it sting them more. I archived every chat, muted every group thread, and tucked every voicemail into a locked folder labeled Clarke Family Evidence. I told myself it was for closure, but the truth is, I wanted a record. Proof that I hadn't imagined their distance. Proof that the version of me that had stayed hopeful for so long wasn't delusional. But here's where the plan, the real plan, began to take shape. After 2 months of silence, I received a text from my dad at 11:48 p.m. "We're worried about you. This is going too far. Call us." A minute later, another from my mom. "Naomi, don't be dramatic. Families fight. You're still a Clarke." Those last 4 words felt like a chain tightening around my throat. Still a Clarke. Still the outsider who wasn't chosen. Still the daughter whose milestones were disposable. That was the moment I realized my revenge couldn't just be distance. It needed to be truth, but controlled truth, strategic, clean, undeniable. One reveal, one moment that forced them to confront their own reflection. So I began building what I now call the Clarke Archive, a curated folder containing years of ignored texts, last-minute cancellations, forgotten birthdays, that graduation voicemail they never returned, and, most importantly, a screen recording of the pool party video, the one where they toasted my brother while joking about ditching Naomi's big day. Watching it still made my stomach twist, but it also gave me clarity. My family cared about reputation more than they ever cared about me. They wrapped their dysfunction in expensive clothes and Sunday manners. They were the kind of people who would rather lose a daughter quietly than be embarrassed loudly. So that became the leverage. I didn't want to expose them publicly. This wasn't about humiliation. It was about accountability. It was about giving them the truth they kept pretending didn't exist. And I knew exactly when to deliver it. One afternoon, my mom texted again, "We want to invite you for Sunday dinner. Let's put everything behind us." Behind us. As if my pain was a minor scheduling conflict. I replied, "Sure, I'll come." Because revenge, contrary to what movies show, often looks like calm cooperation. The night of the dinner, I arrived exactly on time. My mom opened the door with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. My dad hugged me too tightly, as though pressure could substitute sincerity. My brother gave me the same smirk he always did, the one that said, "You're overreacting, and we all know it." We ate in careful silence until my dad finally cleared his throat. "Naomi, sweetheart, we miss you. Your distance has been hurtful." I almost laughed. My distance was hurtful. Their neglect was an oversight? I had rehearsed what I would say for days, but when I opened my mouth, the words came out softer than I expected. "I'm glad you miss me, but you don't know me, because you've never chosen me." The room tensed. My mother's fork froze midair. I continued, my voice trembling despite my efforts to study it. "I'm tired of being the child everyone assumes will be fine on her own. I'm tired of being the afterthought. I'm tired of being the Clarke who doesn't count." My brother scoffed. "Are we really doing this? Because you're mad we missed one event?" That was my cue. I took out my phone, opened the Clarke archive, and hit play. The pool video filled the dining room with its loud music and laughter. My family sat frozen as they watched themselves clink glasses, cracking jokes about choosing cocktails over my doctorate. My mother's hand flew to her mouth. My dad stared at the table like it had betrayed him. My brother muttered, "Damn." When the clip ended, I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I simply said, "This is why I pulled away. This is why I don't feel like your daughter. And this is why I'm not carrying McClarke name anymore." My mom gasped. My dad stammered something about family legacy, but the decision had already taken root long before I spoke it aloud. "Naomi, you can't just erase us." I held his gaze. "I'm not erasing you. I'm removing myself from a story I was never actually part of." Silence. Heavy. Uncomfortable. Necessary. Then I stood, gathered my coat, and walked towards the door. No dramatics. No tears. Just that quiet finality that comes when a person realizes they've outgrown the pain that wants to find them. As I reached the doorway, my mom asked, voice breaking, "Is this really the revenge you want?" I didn't look back. I said softly, "It's not revenge. It's release." And with that, I stepped into the night. No longer a Clarke, no longer begging to belong, no longer apologizing for expecting the love any daughter deserves. For the first time in my life, walking away felt like winning. After I walked away that night, something shifted inside me. The silence that had once felt heavy and isolating became a shield. A reminder that my story didn't belong to anyone else. The betrayal, the empty chairs, the laughter at my expense, the poolside toasts my parents and brother prioritized over me didn't have the power to define my life anymore. Not because they had changed, but because I had. To anyone listening right now, I want you to hear this clearly. Betrayal is not the end. The people who fail you, who abandon you, who treat your milestones as optional, they cannot write the final chapter of your life. That power belongs to you. Every act of indifference or cruelty can feel like a door closing, but behind that door is a space you get to fill on your terms. You can step into it, rebuild, and reclaim every piece of yourself they tried to ignore. For me, revenge wasn't about public humiliation or screaming. It was power. The quiet, controlled kind that lets you take back your dignity and shows without theatrics that you matter more than their choices. Archiving voicemails, saving texts, collecting proof of the patterns weren't just evidence. They were tools that helped me see clearly, focus calmly, and ultimately release the anger I carried without losing myself in it. Every time I reviewed them, I felt myself growing stronger, steadier, more certain that I would not bend to their negligence or approval. That clarity became a foundation, and the foundation became freedom. I devoted time to myself after that. I focused on my work, my passions, my community. I learned to celebrate my victories, even the small ones, without waiting for validation from those who chose to abandon me. I redefined family, support, and love in ways that were real, tangible, and nourishing. Slowly, the ache of betrayal softened, replaced with the confidence that comes from knowing you don't need anyone's permission to live fully. And the truth is, when you take back your narrative, the world starts to open up in ways you didn't expect. Opportunities appear, friendships deepen, your own voice, once hesitant and dimmed by disappointment, grows stronger. The story they tried to write for you, the one where you're a secondary character, a footnote, or invisible, loses its power. You are the author now. My name is Naomi. I am the daughter they abandoned on the biggest day of my life. I am the woman who watched her parents and brother choose their own pleasure over her triumph. I am also the woman who took control of her story, used betrayal as fuel, and reclaimed her dignity quietly but unmistakably. Today, I stand taller not because they recognized my worth, but because I recognized it first. I am thriving, building a life I love, and letting go of anyone who doesn't belong in it. And if there's one thing I want you to take from my story, it's this. The end isn't written by those who hurt you. It's written by you. Revenge, when done with purpose and clarity, can be a form of liberation. It can remind you that power isn't loud, it's deliberate. And from that power, you can come back stronger, wiser, and more unshakable than you ever imagined. I am Naomi, and this is my comeback. This was another story from Revenge Bible, where we turn pain into purpose and betrayal into balance. Subscribe and join us for the next transformation.